With his take, Frank McKenna is a former Canadian ambassador to the United States. Mr. McKenna, do you think that Carney should have or should still denounce this ad just to try to appease Trump in this moment?
No, I don't think so. It's a delicate balancing act, but I think it goes between not being a supplicant and not bending over to Trump and continuing to stay in his good graces. And I think you do that just by being adult and respectful, but not being obsequious. I think he's following the right course.
You know, given how volatile this administration is, I'm not sure that this part matters, but I'm still trying to get my head around how this went so wrong so quickly, right? Because Trump saw the ad and responded to it saying, oh yeah, I'd have done the same thing if I was them. Then the Reagan Foundation spoke up and said that, you know, there were problems with it legally or otherwise. Then after that, suddenly Trump comes out saying they're trying to illegally influence the Supreme Court. What do you think sort of set this whole thing off?
Well, I don't think it's got anything to do with that. You know, it obviously hit a nerve, and perhaps the ad was effective because it did hit a nerve. As I often say, you know, a dog doesn't bark at a parked car. So obviously, something provoked them, but it's got nothing to do with the Supreme Court. In fact, rumor is that Trump himself may appear before the Supreme Court so that he can try to influence the results. And so it's got nothing to do with that. And I don't think it's got anything to do with the ad. I think it's part of his approach to negotiating. He does it with everybody. He's back and forth with China. They're on, they're off. He's doing it with Colombia now. He did it with Brazil. It's part of his negotiating strategy, kind of a punch in the face and see, how do you like that? And now let's get back to the table. And he likes to throw his opponents off balance and try to get advantage that way. He'll write about it in a book someday. But no, I think this is part of normal course negotiating for him.
Yeah, I think the chaos is certainly part of the game plan. Like it's part of the design. And you can see Carney as part of their design is to say, well, you know, listen, we'll keep talking, and when they're ready, we'll talk to them whenever they want. In this instance, do you think the Canadian side can afford to just kind of wait this out and see where the next opportunity comes?
Well, I think we have to, in order to get the best deal. First of all, we do have an enviable position compared to the rest of the world. Only about 5% of our goods are tariffed. That doesn't minimize the pain on the people that are feeling those tariffs and have lost jobs, et cetera, have been laid off. But we can wait it out. But there's also pain being spread around. In the United States, they're paying 50% more for aluminum. In fact, probably more than that now, because there was a fire in a New York rolling mill that supplies 30% of the U.S. auto trade. So the pain is even more pronounced now because of our aluminum. They also feel pain with respect to Canadians not going across the border anymore in terms of traveling, liquor on shelves. There are a number of pain points. On the agriculture side, they're feeling some pain. So I think there's some pressure building on both sides of the border. Would it be nice to have a deal? It would. It would settle things down, make it easier for investors, make it easier for consumers. It would make us all feel better. But I don't think we're going to have that during Trump's lifetime. He's the Prince of Chaos, and it's part of his modus operandi, and I think we're just going to have to end up living with that and do the best we can. Quite frankly, I think Carney is being more than reasonable. I could never be that reasonable. He's being moderate and reasonable, not rising to the provocation and trying to keep things on track.
It feels sometimes like he has Doug Ford to do that for him, right? That he can lash out and say things. And this ad, at the end of the day, will have reached millions of Americans that depend on Canada, right? Like in Michigan, where they send $68 billion worth of goods to Canada every year, in Pennsylvania, where it's $28 billion, North Dakota's like 82% of their exports come to Canada. Is there something effective in, despite the turmoil that we have seen today, is there something effective in having reached out to this many Americans and made the case in this way?
Well, I think so. It does influence decision makers. Hopefully Congress will see it and realize there's something to it. We have to remember, we do have points of leverage. We are the biggest consumer of American goods. by a wide margin. We're colossal, almost $500 billion worth of goods we buy in Canada. We also are the biggest provider of raw materials to the United States of America. And look, I'd remind you of some other small little thing, may seem insignificant. We're paying a 35% for allegedly allowing fentanyl to cross the border, which of course is a farce. But the farcical nature of that is brought home by the fact that as of today, an aircraft carrier steaming into the Caribbean with 10,000 troops deployed in the Caribbean to deal with drug trafficking. The United States doesn't even have a Boy Scout on the border with Canada, its longest border. So that should tell you what a friend we are and what an ally we are to the United States of America. And it's important for Americans to realize that. They are picking a fight at a time when they have legitimate issues with China, with Russia perhaps. They're picking a fight with their very best friend and ally. An ally in defense, an ally in trade and commerce, just an ally in every way imaginable. And I think most Americans properly instructed would say, this is ridiculous. Why are we doing this?
You know, there's so many parallels to the first Trump presidency. And we saw eventually they backed down on the tariffs, even after they had signed the new USMCA. But it only came when the pain that was being felt was spread out pretty thoroughly across the United States. And there are people suffering today for sure. There are sectors that are getting hit. But so far, we haven't seen widespread slowdown in GDP. We haven't seen the pain that we expected to see so far. I mean, the Dow Jones closed, or the S&P closed about 47,000 points. We're setting record highs on stock markets. Does the correlation of pain hitting Americans where it hurts the most in their pocketbooks and the ending of these tariffs, do those two have to line up before we can really expect to see any progress?
Yeah, probably. You need deal tension with this president because I think that's all he cares about. It's not about friendship here; it's about interest, his interest in particular. And your question is very astute. We had anticipated that we would see secular inflation rising. We had anticipated as well it would affect jobs and affect the economy of the United States more vigorously than it has. But the United States is on a bit of a sugar high. They've got 4 or 5, maybe half a dozen AI companies which are soaring to stratospheric levels. And it's carried the whole stock market with it. So in a way, I think there's a bit of a false economy that's the outward-facing economy we see in the United States, and it has slowed down the pain from tariffs, no doubt about that. But there are secular trend lines, Peter, that we need to exploit. Oil is an example. The United States is a major producer of oil, but it's also in decline. And the cost of producing new oil is significant, whereas in Canada, we've got a virtual lifetime of oil. Probably have oil in perpetuity in Canada. And there's going to be a time where the United States is going to go into much more rapid decline, and they're going to need our resource. That was the reason why they negotiated with us the original free trade agreement back in 1989, because they wanted energy security. And once again, I think we can provide them with energy security, whether it's oil or natural gas or potash, but also critical minerals, as well as defense security. Sharing in the defense of North America, et cetera, buying defense products from the United States. All of those things can accrue to the benefit of both countries if we work together. And if we want to create a moat, let's create a moat around North America, but not a moat around America against its best friends and allies.
We're going to have to leave it there, but I'm sure glad we were able to get your take on all this. Thanks for this.
And thank you.
Derek Burney is a former Canadian ambassador to the United States and joins us now. Mr. Burney, what was your reaction when you heard that that President Trump was calling off trade talks and citing this ad as his rationale?
Well, I wasn't surprised in some senses, because he loves delivering thunderbolts from time to time, but it's a considerable overreaction. To my mind, because Ronald Reagan is known worldwide as being pro-free trade, anti-tariff, and so there's no denying that, especially if you use his own words.
Is there anything to trying to figure out in this moment what triggered this? Because he initially said, oh yeah, if I was in their position, I'd have done the same thing. Somebody got to him and said something. Is there any point in trying to go back through and figure out what happened? Or is it just something that happened and now we got to figure out what the next step is?
Well, if you could predict what Donald Trump is doing or why he's doing what he's doing, you would be in a minority of one. Nobody knows what he's going to do from one day to the next. Think of Zelensky in Ukraine and what he's been going through with a hot and cold romance or bromance, I guess you call it, with Putin. No, the guy is unpredictable. And this is another example of it. He's under pressure. He's facing a Supreme Court decision, which is probably going to go against him on tariffs. The country is not receiving tariffs well. His polls are down, not up, even with the magnificent peace accord in the Middle East. So he's under a lot of pressure, and he's under a lot of pressure because of the tariffs, which are not working for American people the way he said they would. And that is what I think this is all about. He's very annoyed when he sees somebody other than an American touting Ronald Reagan as being anti-tariff and pro-free trade. That bothers him. That gets under his skin. And he's easy to get under the skin of.
So Mark Carney has said that, Canada stands ready to talk with the U.S., but he isn't suggesting reaching out to Trump. Is that the right stance in this moment? Sort of let this play out however it's going to play out? They might run into each other in Asia this weekend.
Well, I'm sure they will. And I'm sure we should wait and see what happens there and not overreact in any way. I mean, think of what this is. It's a 1-minute ad on American television that quotes a former American president. Now, that's going to cause a trade negotiation to be terminated. I mean, Trump has taken these decisions before with other countries. So I think we do have to let the dust settle a bit, let some normalcy come back. If we're having a real negotiation, I've yet to see any evidence that we've had much of a real negotiation, I have to say. I mean, it's gone on for a long time with many visits to Washington, but I haven't seen anything that I could point to as a result. So what they're doing to us already is very damaging to Canada, and we can't take that lying down. We have to show spine and unanimity in Canada when we're dealing with this kind of pressure from our American president.
On that issue of sort of the negotiations that have been going on and the sense of what's coming out of those meetings, Kevin Hassett, who's the National Economic Council director for Trump, has said that Trump is frustrated with Canada and the actions and posture of Canada, and that is something that's been sort of burbling under the surface for a while. When you combine the volatile reaction we've seen from Trump with this sort of steady stream from Hassett and from Howard Lutnick and Scott Bessent saying that Trump is frustrated, that the Canadians don't seem to be giving him what he wants, how hopeful should any of us be that there is a path out of this mess?
Consider the source, first of all. I mean, none of the individuals you've mentioned are actually known for their policy, for their prowess on trade policy. In fact, quite the contrary. They're protectionists, they're anti-free trade, they're pro-tariff. Well, in a trade policy community, they would be in a distinct minority. Now, I think we've got to be patient, let some dust settle here. I mean, this is a once in a blue moon outrage by the president. By tomorrow, he'll be on to other things. We should stand firm. If they don't want to negotiate, okay. I mean, we'll have to deal with that. But I don't think that's where we are. I think this is a one of a kind maneuver by Donald Trump, who loves to do this kind of. He loves to destabilize whoever he's dealing with in whatever way he can, in the hope that will cause us to knuckle under. We know they don't like some of the things in Canada that affect their trade, like supply management, which is a real bête noire for the Americans, even though they have a form of it in the United States, would you believe? But they don't acknowledge that, except at the negotiating table, they have to, because you can point it out to them, as we did back in the 1980s. So, I've seen this movie many times, and I'm not going to get rattled by one event. on one day because tomorrow is another day, as that movie famously said.
If you were advising either Carney or Ontario Premier Doug Ford today, would you tell them to keep running the ad, or would you say, all right, let's pull it and see if we can get things back on track?
I would never tell them to pull an ad. I mean, that's silly. I mean, this is not, this is not earth-shaking. No. I mean, we do need to see more unanimity with the provinces. I don't like freewheeling. I never liked it when I was in government, and I certainly don't like it today. And we need to see some spine from the federal government, not concessions. Concessions that don't deliver are not worth very much. So let's show some spine. The federal government has the trade and commerce power. It should invoke it. We should get the provinces to live up to their commitment to interprovincial free trade. That would give us 2 to 3% in terms of GDP. They've been dilly-dallying on that one far too long. So if I were advising Prime Minister Carney, I would say get the provinces in line and don't take no for an answer on this one. We waited 20 years for them to get their act together. Show some spine in Canada that will have an effect in America.
Well, listen, as always, we appreciate your insight and appreciate making time to speak with us today.
Thank you very much.